Yeah. So I think most people know me already, but I'm Jim Hicks. I edit the Massachusetts Review, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight for the celebration of this first issue, not one of the first 100 that you just saw. And this is the first issue from our 64th year as a literary quarterly. Our magazine, as most of you know, has its office here at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, a university that was founded and built on the unceded homelands of the Pocumtuck Nation, on the land of the Nwokolo community. So we begin with gratitude for nearby waters and lands, including the Quinnipiac, which is the southern portion of what's now called the Connecticut River. We recognize these lands and waters as important relations with which we are all connected and depend on to sustain life and well-being. The Nwokolo community was one of many Pocumtuck Indian towns, including the tribal seat at Pocumtuck in present-day Deerfield, Agawam in Springfield, and Waranoco, Westfield, to name just a few. The Pocumtuck, who had connections with these lands for millennia, are part of a vast expanse of Algonquin relations. Over 400 years of colonization, Pocumtuck peoples were displaced. Many joined their Algonquin relatives to the east, south, west, and north. Extant communities of Wampanoag, including Aquinwa, Herring Pond, and Mashpee, Massachusetts. The Nipmuc, with a reservation at Grafton, Massachusetts. The Narragansett at Kingston, Rhode Island. The Sketakot, Mohegan, and Pequot people in Connecticut. The Abenaki and other nations of the Wabanaki Confederacy extending northward into Canada. And the Stockbridge, Moonsea, Mohegan of New York and Massachusetts, who were removed to Wisconsin in the 19th century. Over hundreds of years of removal, members of the southern New England tribes would make the journey home to attend important places and renew their connections with their ancestral lands. And such care and connection to land and waters continues to the present day. We also acknowledge that the University of Massachusetts Amherst is a land-grant university. As part of the Morrill Land Grant Act of 1862, tribal lands from 82 native nations west of the Mississippi were sold to provide resources to found and build this university. And as the editors of the Massachusetts Review believe that acknowledging this history is both appropriate and necessary, but also only one step. Our magazine is also committed to working with Native editors and writers and mentoring Native students and interns. On the 400th anniversary of the settler colonial invasion, Plymouth, we published a special issue, A Gathering of Native Voices, for which the guest editors and contributors were all from Native American and indigenous communities. Along with our spring issue, we brought copies of that issue as well, if you'd like to check it out. We also need to acknowledge some folks who made this event possible. First and foremost, the dynamic duo of Eddie Clifford and Emily Wojcik, who make nearly everything happen at MR. Emily's actually at a second Mass Review-related event tonight, so you'll just have to applaud twice as hard for Eddie, who's there in the back of the room. We also want to thank as well the Department of Languages, Literatures, and Cultures and the Program in Comparative Literature for sponsoring this event, and of course, Leah Suarez Orozco, the events coordinator for the Old Chapel. And we also need to acknowledge tonight the brilliant design work of Pam Glavin, the magazine's tireless art director, who for decades now has worked with us, but in this spring issue is inaugurating what may be the first ever total redesign of the Massachusetts Review from the ground up. So that's one more reason to take a look at our issue. I'm sure you'll agree that the new design both looks like us and makes us look better than we ever have before. Okay, so I feel like I've already been talking too long, and I haven't even gotten to the main event. But I have one more announcement, and this is an important one. And I'd also like to ask for your help. We have this year inaugurated a new literary prize, the Ekweme Michael Thelwell Prize for writing on race, justice, and equality, named for the brilliant writer, SNCC activist, and first chair of the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies, Mike Thelwell. Since its founding in 1959, the Massachusetts Reviews played a unique role in recognizing the importance of black culture and that of other people of color in the United States and in the world. The impressive list of black writers that's been published within our pages includes Chinua Achebe, Tony Cade Bambara, Sterling Brown, Stokely Carmichael, Lucille Clifton, W.E.B. Du Bois, Martin Luther King, Toni Morrison, and Ntozake Shange, and that's just a few. The magazine has a similarly impressive backlist for other traditions and communities, one that includes, in just the past few years, notable special issues on Asian American, as I've just mentioned, Native American writing. We've already raised over a third of the money we need to endow the Thelwell Prize and make it permanent. And if you'd like to help us get the rest of the way there, just pick up a donation form at the back of the room. Of James Baldwin, his friend and UMass colleague, Professor Thelwell has commented that for the first time in any real way in the history of this country, the voice and weight and momentum of the black experience addressed this nation directly. It flayed, it lacerated, it inspired, and it challenged. So, the quinquennial Thelwell Prize intends to honor work that continues this tradition, as did Baldwin, we hope, to restore a measure of relevance, of dignity, and power to the literary profession for this nation and for the world by celebrating writers that serve as inspiration, shield, and armor in the struggle for justice and equality. Okay, enough. Let's get on with the show. So I'm going to quickly and inadequately introduce our first reading and then come back up to do just as bad a job for the others later. To begin our program tonight, we have a reading in Spanish by AmaliaLú Posso Figueroa, and then you'll be hearing the first ever English translation of her work done by Jeff Deitman and Shanta Lee. So we'll start with AmaliaLú introducing and reading her work in Spanish. Robinson Alvarado Vargas has very generously, and in response to our very last-minute request, offered to help us out with interpreting AmaliaLú's intro. Shanta Lee will then be reading the English version, since Jeff, unfortunately, is out sick this evening. Shanta Lee is the author of the poetry collections Black Metamorphoses and Ghetto Claustrophobia, which was the winner of the 2020 Diode Press Full-Length Book Prize. And when Shanta's not writing poetry, she's working on her memoir project, doing arts and culture reviews for Vermont Public Radio, and tending to her photography projects. She teaches media studies at the Putney School. And AmaliaLú Posso Figueroa is a Colombian writer, storyteller, psychotherapist, and professor who's dedicated her life to representing in writing and performance the oral traditions of women from the Pacific Coastal Plain. And Jeff, who couldn't be here tonight and is heartbroken about that, sent me a note about an hour ago. So I'm going to continue AmaliaLú's biography by reading a bit of his note. He said he's honored and delighted to collaborate with Shanta Lee and the Massachusetts Review to present the first ever English translation of the extraordinary writing of AmaliaLú Posso Figueroa. The story, Fidelia Cordoba, is the first of 25 literary portraits comprising the book Bella Ben, Mis Nanas Negras, first published in 2001. And if you find this story fascinating, rest assured that the work, Jeff tells us, is as a whole is astounding. It's steeped in the storytelling traditions of Colombia's Pacific coast, but also distinctly original and imaginative. AmaliaLú's book defies categorization. Sociologists have lauded the way it documents the dialects and lifeways of the Choco region, but the author assures me, Jeff says, that it's not ethnographic work because it's written from an insider's perspective, written from the heart, or more appropriately, from the heel, from the nose, from the nalgas and the tetas of a writer who spent her childhood surrounded by the wit, intuitions, and rhythms of the black women of Choco. Okay. So with that, please help me now in welcoming AmaliaLú to Amherst. This is Martín Espada height, almost.
No, put out. No? No?
Yeah.
Oh, she wants to hold it.
You're a rock star.
Is ready? Jim.
I think so.
Yo soy AmaliaLú Posso Figueroa. Nací y crecí en Quibdó. Me mojó el aguacero, me abrazó el calor. El viento me levantó la falda, empapada en sudor. El pacó y el manduro aromaron mi espacio. El borojó y el marañón sensibilizaron mi lengua. El río Atrato llevó mis ojos a viajar y la chirimía con su música enseñó mi cuerpo a cimbrear. Todo en esas tardes calientes, chocuanas, cuando mis nanas negras me contaban historias al mismo tiempo que borboritaban las palabras en zigzag.
I was born and raised in Quibdó, Chocó, soaked by the rainfall and embraced by the heat of the mind blue of my skirt that soaked away all the pacó and the mandrano plant that scented my life, and the fruit of borojo filled my tongue with the flavor, and the Atrato River traveled my eyes away and flew through the sound of chirimia drums that taught dances to my body, and my black nannies populated my fantasies with endless sunsets, with noisy narratives, caressing my mind.
Después, mucho tiempo después, la Universidad Nacional de Colombia aceleró el ritmo de mi cerebro, formándome como psicóloga, dizque para que ayudara a desacelerar el ritmo del cerebro de los demás. Y allí, en la Universidad Nacional de Colombia, se disparó el ritmo de mi lado izquierdo y aprendí que el mejor de los ritmos es el que te permite pelear por el bienestar de los demás.
And then, many years later, at the Universidad Nacional, the rhythm of my brain was sped up in order to help, as a psychologist, to lay down and rest the brains of others, to help them feel the well-being. There, my left brain was sped up, and I learned that the most fair rhythm is that makes you feel better and makes you feel better by helping others walk well.
Hice y hago psicoterapia con ritmo. Me adentré en muchos de los vericuetos del arte y ahora escribo cuentos que me han permitido la delicia de volver a caminar descalza sobre la arena mojada, de ver la sonrisa blanca y franca de mi gente negra y de estar aquí hoy con ustedes compartiendo algunas de esas historias.
I travel and I work for many years with kids and teenagers as a psychotherapist And then I started writing dreams and tales and stories. I went through the mazes of art and culture, and I found that the best way to share the jungle and the liking for walking barefoot through the sound of the music and the laughter, the spontaneous laughter of my people, all under the loving care and sight of Valentina and Yohir Ackerman Pozo, which are the best life has brought to my shores.
Y vamos a compartir hoy la historia hermosamente traducida por Jeff Ditteman y Shanta Lee.
And today I want to share with you this beautifully translated story.
Jeff Ditteman.
Jeff Ditteman has bring to you in this version that we will render now.
Adiós. La nana Fidelia Córdoba tenía el ritmo en las tetas. Tenía unas tetas redonditas, chiquitas, turgentes, como dos colosos, con unos pezones retráctiles que poseían sentido de orientación. Los pezones de las tetas de la nana Fidelia eran al mismo tiempo brújula, sextante, rosa de los vientos, escandelo, sondaleza, cuadrante y astrolabio. Los pezones de las tetas de la nana Fidelia debían ser del signo escorpión, porque encontraban su elemento siempre en y sobre el agua. Una vez se armó un paseo en lancha allá en Quito. La lancha en el Chocó se llama de 4 maneras distintas: canoa, potro, champa o chingo, dependiendo del tamaño. Esa era una champa, y todo el mundo bajó a orillas del río Atrato y se montaron en esa champa, y arrancó esa champa en medio del corrinche y la algarabía. Unos cantaban, otros contaban, porque en el Chocó se canta y se cuenta. Unos tomaban aguardiente platino, que es un aguardiente calientico que pone en la garganta sabrosa para cantar o para contar. Todo era alegría. Unos hacían chumblún, chumblún desde la patilla de la canoa en las aguas del río Atrato. Cuando de pronto la champa se detuvo, sin motivo y sin razón, en medio de la noche y en la mitad del río Atrato. El sol, que hasta ese momento había sido abrasador, fue cerrando el abrazo. Y todos los que estaban montados en esa champa siguieron haciendo lo que estaban haciendo chumblún, chumblún desde la patilla de la canoa, cantando, contando, tomando aguardiente platino. Hasta que de pronto el boga, el maquinista, dijo: quiero comunicar a toda la gente que va montada en esta champa que el motor, el Johnson, el fuera de borda, no obedece ni al primero ni al quinto jalonazo. Y lo más grave de todo es que yo no sé dónde estamos ni para dónde vamos. Y ahí sí fue que el asombro empezó a recorrer los ojos de todas las personas que estaban montadas en esa champa. Lo único que se les veía en la cerrada noche era lo blanquito de los ojos. Cuando de pronto, como siempre pasa en el Chocó, donde llueve todos los días, casi todo el día, todas las noches, casi toda la noche, se largó el aguacero. Y toda la gente que estaba montada en esa champa se empezó a mojar. A los hombres se les mojó el pantalón, la camisa, a las mujeres la farda, el calzón, la blusa y el ajustador. Cuando la nana Fidelia Córdoba se le empezó a mojar la blusa, se le empezó a mojar el ajustador y se le empezaron a mojar las tetas. Cuando se le empezaron a mojar las tetas, el pezón izquierdo de la teta izquierda señaló en esta dirección y el pezón derecho de la teta derecha señaló en esta dirección. Entonces la gente que estaba montada en la champa decía: ¡ay, Barujo santísimo! Una teta dice que para allá y la otra dice que para acá. ¿Para dónde cogemos? y siguió el aguacero. Y en su momento de manga, que es el momento más fuerte del aguacero, le chocó, todo el mundo estaba completamente mojado en esa champa. Y en un momento determinado, los dos pezones de las tetas de la nana Fidelia Córdoba señalaron en la misma dirección. Nadie lo puso en duda. Los que tenían canalete empezaron a canaletear, a canaletear, a canaletear. Los que tenían palanca de recatón la apoyaban cuando el lecho del río lo permitía, y los que no tenían canalete ni palanca de recatón acunaron las manos y metían primero una, después la otra, primero una, después la otra, para hacer la champa avanzar. Pasó mucho tiempo, largo tiempo, larguísimo. Nadie supo cuánto, hasta que de pronto la champa hizo... Habían llegado a orillas de un pueblo oscuras. Y todo el mundo se bajó apresuradamente de esa champa. Decían, ¡ay, santísima! Nos íbamos a ahogar en la mitad del río Atrato. La única que quedó solitica, sentada en la champa, fue la nana Fidelia Córdoba, quien dirigió una mirada agradecida, primero a su pezón izquierdo, después a su pezón derecho, y sonrió. Sus blanquísimos dientes fue lo último que dejó ver la cerrada noche. Y siguió Fidelia Córdoba, ayudando a la gente que perdía el rumbo en tierra, pero sobre todo en agua. Hasta que un día la nana Fidelia Córdoba se enamoró. Él llamaba Catolando, era blanco, marrullero, y tenía por oficio recoger paquetes forrados en plástico que aviones sonámbulos botaban en medio de la noche en la mitad del mar. Cuando le dijeron que había una mujer con un sentido de orientación perfecto en el pezón izquierdo, la teta izquierda y el pezón derecho, la teta derecha, dijo, esa es la que necesito para el negocio. Y se fue a buscarla, y la encontró, y la enamoró, y la convenció de que la amaba. Y se la llevó a vivir a orillas del mar. Y salían por las noches, la barca, Catol, Fidelia y el pezón, y ya no recogían 20, 30, 50 paquetes forrados en plástico que aviones sonámbulos botaban en medio de la noche en la mitad del mar. Recogían 100, 150, 200 paquetes forrados en plástico que aviones sonámbulos botaban en medio de la noche en la mitad del mar. Era la perfección, la precisión detectada por el pezón. La gente en el pueblo comentaba, ay, Barujo, Fidelia Córdoba, que está boba, está pendeja, está pensando que ese blanco está por vos. Ese blanco no está por vos. Ese blanco está por el sentido de orientación que tenía en el pezón izquierdo, la teta izquierda, y el pezón derecho de la teta derecha. Fidelia Córdoba no decía nada, pero las mujeres sabemos cuándo nos usan y cuándo nos utilizan. Y una noche salieron Fidelia Catol, la barca y el pezón. Y no volvieron, ni Fidelia ni Catol, ni la barca ni el pezón. Y no había una explicación ni mayor ni menor. El mar, con toda su inmensidad, no tenía cómo ganarle la partida a Fidelia Córdoba. El mar, con toda su inmensidad, nunca tuvo una sondaleza, un astrolabio, una rosa de los vientos que le permita saber en qué dirección se mueve. El mar, con toda su inmensidad, nunca tuvo, nunca tendrá el ritmo en las tetas como mi nana Fidelia Córdoba.
I'm not going to be the rock star. The nanny Fidelia Córdoba kept her rhythm in her tetas. She'd been born on the banks of the river Sipi, and she had bulging tetas, round and small pericarrosos with retractile nipples that also had a sense of direction. They were all at once. Compass, sextant, weather vane, plumb line, quadrant, astrolabe, point you left, point you right, or wherever you needed to go. But never the kind of nipples that get you lost. The nipples on the tetas of the nanny Fidelia pointed north and south, east and west, Up and down, inward, outward. They always showed the right way to go. The nipples on the tetas of the Neni Fidelia were the navigator, the pathfinder, the salvation of all who lost their way on water or on land, but especially on water. The nipples on the tetas of the Neni Fidelia must have been born under the sign of Scorpio because they moved like fish and water. Once there was a riverboat ride to the shouts of
¡Al embarcar!
a crowd gathered, all in bathing suits and swim trunks, hats and sunglasses, Platino liquor to peek in the cheeks and warm the body, clear throats singing.
Un potro que agua abajo venga.
And the craft set out upstream in the river Atrato amid ruckus and gun flapping. The river water splashed our faces, the droplets like needles pricking the skin. The sun, which at first had been scorching, scorned our embrace, then went hiding behind the banana plantations lining the riverbank. Soon, it abandoned us altogether.
Al oscuro metí la mano.
Someone in the boat sang, "Into the darkness I reach." Moments before, all of a sudden the boat stopped. No warning, no cause, no nothing, just stopped. Right there in the middle of the night, in the middle of the river Atrato. At first, folks just went right on gun flapping. Some taking advantage of the situation for a little dip in an Atrato, and others offering a nip of Platino. Then the ferryman announced that the Johnson outboard motor wouldn't start, not on the first pull, nor the fifth. It was dead as a doornail. He didn't know what to do, and what's worse, he didn't know where we were. From that spot, we couldn't see the riverbank, neither of the banks. First, we were wrapped in silence. Then that gave way to worry, which pretty soon erupted into despair. Everybody started talking at once, each with a different idea about what to do. Abdo jumped into the water to swim around the propeller and see if it was tangled in some roots. He swam for a good long while, or swam as someone on board said. Fear began to run through the little pip eyes of the people, the only things glowing in the now dark night. As usual, the downpour wasn't long in coming, and it was then that the compass, sextant, weather vane, plumb line, quadrant, astrolabe, point you left, point you right, nipples on the tetas of the Neni Fidelia found their element in the water. The rosy nubs that were the nipples on the tetas of the Neni Fidelia began pointing in one direction, and so, in the darkness, in the middle of the river Atrato, everyone who could row began rowing the boat with paddles, and, when the riverbed allowed it, pick handles. A long time passed. A long, long time. Nobody knew how long till all of a sudden the boat knocked into something. It was the riverbank of a dark village. We reached Anagata and the bank that was called Yoro. Overwhelmed by emotion, we all surged off the boat. No one knew what kind of plumb line, astrolabe, compass had brought them to land, only the Neni Fidelia, who thanked them. First her left nipple, then her right nipple, with a big smile. Her white teeth were the last thing to be seen in the night's deep darkness. Another day, a hot summer's day. There were a lot of people gathered together enjoying the cool water on the River Sipi. A bunch of women were peeling plantains and scoring fish to cook with some tapao on an improvised grill fanned with woven pepenas, while a black woman smoked tobacco inwardly, holding the ember behind her lips, letting the smoke fill her mouth. She was missing 4 teeth in her front, surely because of this habit, but this gap only made it much easier. Some soda waters were chilling in the river, and 2 men were improvising a tu-ru-ru tata, striking a metal bottle opener against the empty bottles. 2 old women were bathing themselves with totuma gourds on the riverbank. long, modest poplin one-pieces clinging to their bodies, leaving transparencies that would have been aroused in some men had their flesh been younger. Another woman was taking advantage of the weather and the water to scrub laundry on a washboard after rubbing it abundantly with a ball of soap. A little black girl with braids was putting crumbs of cheese in her cup hand to catch coco, a tiny sardine that tasted just right when fried. All of a sudden, the river Sipi rose up. The first thing it swept away was the pot of tapao, then the water bottles, the washboard, the ball of soap, giving no time for nothing but surprise. It left everyone stranded on a tiny sliver of riverbank, their backs pressed up against a high rocky cliff, and their fronts exposed to river that was swelling and swelling by the second. The people all realized at once they had no escape, that the river played them dirty. Almost without thinking, a compass started spinning. The compass of the nipples on the tetas of the Neni Fidelia finally settling with the retractile left nipple pointing toward a ford in the river, a rhythmically burbling ford, which was swiftly crossed by all the people trapped by the swelling river Sipi to reach the exuberance of the jungle, which offered itself overwhelming but safe terra firma. The last one to reach the other side was Neni Fidelia, who cast a grateful glance first to her left nipple, then her right. It was like having been reborn in another time, another era. That is precisely in another rhythm. The rhythm of the nipples on the tetas of the Neni Fidelia. But once, just once, the Neni Fidelia fell in love, vehemently, forcefully, and uneasily. She let herself got caught and sprung. She let herself slide into deep love, a vital, maddening, dangerous love. And that is how she lost her sense of direction. His name was Cato Lendo. He was white and much older than Fidelia Cordoba in years, but not only in years, also in experience and trickery. He convinced her he loved her, and so he started to use her tetes, sense of direction, for his own benefit. He brought her to live by the seaside, where he collected packages that somnambulant airplanes dropped at a predetermined location in the night, in the deep middle of the night. And for this purpose, Fidelia's bodily compass was something like a miracle. The right nipple, the left nipple pointed directly in the night to the exact location of the drop without fail. Her nimble nipples never led them astray. It was better than Gadol had dreamed. And so this fool used her body over and over for his benefit. There were many, many plastic wrapped packets Gadol collected using the exact direction of Fidelia's nipples. He never told her what her nipples were detecting. Never answered straight when she tried to ask, and Fidelia went on forever blinded by love. Her and her body brought out every moonless night to find the packages, dropped from the plane into the sea without her nor her nipples ever knowing what was in them. One of those dark moonless nights, Fidelia went out and started working the rhythm of her nipples for Gadol, but she never returned. No one knew whether the sea swallowed them all up, Fidelia and her nipples, the boat, and Gadol. It was hard to believe, with the keen sense of direction Fidelia derived from the left nipple of her left teta and the right nipple of her right teta, that she, the boat, and Gadol lost their way at sea. There was no explaining, no higher understanding, and no lower. For all its immensity and depth, the sea simply could not have gotten the best of Fidelia Cordoba. The sea did not have, never had, never will have a pair of turgid tetas the size of two corosos. The sea never had an astrolabe, never had a plumb line, much less a sextant or a compass telling it to go left, go right, or any which way. The sea will never have its rhythm in its tetas the way the Nene Fidelia Cordoba did.
For radio fans, our second reading of the evening, I suspect, might well feel like an episode of the wonderful NPR show Selected Shorts, where talented actors from film and TV read wonderful and witty tales from writers all around the world. This evening, we're lucky to have Kym Newberry, who is an accomplished television and film actress, as our reader. Following a successful career in Hollywood, Kym is now a Ph.D. candidate in the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies at UMass. Ms. Newberry was named a cohort member of the CCL Mellon Foundation Seminar in Curatorial Practice, and in August, she will curate an exhibition presenting the work of the Beninois artist Romuald Hazoum in conversation with the human rights campaign of the late Nigerian writer and environmental activist Ken Saro-Wiwa. And this will be at the Mount Holyoke College Art Museum. Kym will be reading today a wicked good story by Chuma Nwokolo, a Nigerian lawyer and writer and the publisher of African Writing magazine. Chuma is the author of the poetry collection Memories of Stone, the serial Tales by Conversation, and mini novels, including Diaries of a Dead African and most recently The Extinction of Mene. He was also a participant in the university's celebration of the legacy of Chinua Achebe, held on the 40th anniversary of Achebe's seminal essay, An Image of Africa. Chuma has been a writer in residence at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, and he lives in England. So now, welcome Kym Newberry.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Massachusetts Review. I don't know if I need this. Let me know if you can hear me or not. You think we're going to be groovy, or do I? We can. Okay. Thank you to the Massachusetts Review for having me. And a little bit of housekeeping. I would like to dedicate my reading this evening to my Nigerian pronunciation spirit gods, Stephanie Shonikin and Professor Roland Abiodun, who have already forgiven me for my pronunciation. So there you have it. So Ashawo. Okay, so that means prostitute. And don't connect that word to me. Okay. And mugu. It means a stupid person. So since I don't connect that one either. So since I used those a couple of times, I didn't want you to be like, what did she say? What a mugu? So we're straight. Here we go. The ransom letters of Sisieko. Dear Mr. Baum, thank you for your letter. Don't worry, I am not mad, so I won't go to the police. The bribe I paid them 2 years ago for my stolen car, which they never recovered, is still vexing me. I will keep this to myself. Please take care of my darling husband. He likes to eat soft aco in the night, if you can manage it. By now he must have told you about his injections. I'm sure you may not believe him, but it's true. If he doesn't take his anti-clot injections every night, he will just die on your hands. And I am not going to pay any ransom for the dead body of my dead husband. Oh, I'm telling you now, it is true. The injection is extremely expensive, and I know you may not have budgeted for it when you were planning the kidnapping, but you have to spend money to get money, not so? So please let me know what the ransom is, and I will pay it. My husband is a good and faithful man. We don't have any children, and he is all I have. As you instructed, I will stroll down Towson Street at exactly 9 p.m. wearing a yellow head tie, and I will give this letter to the first beggar boy that comes carrying a yellow bowl and call me Ashawu. But please now, can you choose another password next time? I don't see the point of being insulted for nothing's sake. Mrs. Asharu Conton. Day 2. Dear Bio de Bomb, sorry, I wasn't trying to make fun of your nickname. It is just my lack of experience in things like this, so please forgive me. About this kidnap business, is this 5 million naira or 50,000 naira I am reading? I think the zeros are a bit too much. Didn't you know I am just a housewife? Or don't you know, don't you people do your research before kidnapping anybody? Anyway, I read the newspapers as well. The Surulere businesswoman that they kidnapped 3 weeks ago, is it not only 100,000 naira they paid? My husband is an ordinary civil servant, and you are asking me for 5 million. I know that the Surulere people took 3 months to negotiate the ransom down, but look, I don't have 3 months. And with the cost of anti-clot injections, you don't have 3 months either. Look, the truth is that I'm going to Dubai this very weekend, and my ticket is non-refundable. So just tell me your last price. I am offering to pay 50,000 naira. Please, I don't have the kind of money you are asking. If I try and borrow more than 5,000 naira, my friends will laugh at me. Unless I tell them the truth. First you say I shouldn't tell anybody. Next you say I should bring 5 million. From where? Does your own housewife keep 5 million under her bed? Don't forget that my husband is just an ordinary deputy director in the civil service. Yes, he sees a little bribe here and there like everybody else, but it is not the type that you are thinking. Or do you want me to talk to my husband's senior brother? He can raise 200,000 or 300,000 easily. The problem is that my in-law is a senior director at the Ministry of Police Affairs. That is the problem. If I tell him, he will just be thinking, police, police. That's the problem. And you know how efficient the police can be when the investigation concerns them personally. If they arrest anybody there is no court. They just settle everything with accidental discharge. I am sending my saving passbook with this letter so you can see the kind of money that my husband gives me every month. I am not complaining, mark you, because he pays most of my bills, except I don't see the money in cash. That's all. You know how you men are. Don't say I'm teaching you your job, but normally kidnappers will kidnap a child or a mistress or something, not the main man who can raise the money. Anyway, should I send you my trinkets? They are not real gold, but they are very, very pretty, and I know my husband will replace them when he comes back. If you agree, I can pack them up very well, give them to your beggar boy instead of your 5 million naira. By the way, Mugu is not much better than Ashawo. I will answer Mugo this time, but for next time, let the password be Sisieko. This is not good home training you are giving your apprentices. I have to tell you this, teaching them to be calling respectable women like me bad names like that. Mrs. Ashuru Konton. Day 3. Dear Bio de Bom. Ha! Look! I am begging you on my knees, please do not castrate my husband. Are there not enough women in this world? Biodegrade, what is really vexing you now? If it is the password of a thing, okay, call me Ashawo. If it is rudeness, ask my husband. This is how I talk. And if it is the other thing, well, who will you believe? A weed-smoking beggar boy or a respectable housewife like me? I was wearing a big yellow head tie with Buba Ati-Iro. He saw a ganja vision that looks like me, wearing a green beret and a black raincoat trying to follow him. Is that my fault? Am I James Bond to be changing dress in the middle of the road? That your beggar boy must be mad. I don't know why you should send a ganja smoker to do a serious job like this. Don't be surprised if he finally run away with all of the ransom money. Anyway, thank you for reducing your ransom to the final price of 1 million naira. And thank you for returning my passbook. Let us leave my Dubai spending money for now. I have told you the ticket is non-refundable. Even my hotel has been paid for before I even got my visa. So I am supposed to fly to Dubai and sit in the hotel for 1 whole week without eating? No. Will you do that to your own wife? How can you think of that sort of punishment? How much is that chicken change spending money anyway for you to put your eyes in it? Despite that you are a kidnapper and I am a respectable housewife, with the things I did to get that spending money, we might both still meet each other in hell. And then you want me to give you the money. Biodegrade bomber. Let's leave that chicken change money for now. But don't worry. I have seen how to solve this problem. I don't know how much money my husband has in the bank. You know how secretive you men can be. But I am sending the check I tore from his checkbook, which arrived by post this morning. I have written my name and your 1 million naira final ransom. Let him just sign it and write the letter of authority. I am his wife, and even though the money is heavy, the bank manager knows me. If you go there yourself, you know there are plenty of cameras and police and whatnot. I am sure I can cash the check for you. But you have to ask him if he has enough money there or not. Because I don't like to go on foolish errands. And please, oh, don't useless my husband for me. Mrs. Asheru Konton. Day 4. Dear Mawa de Machete. Whew, thank you for taking over this matter. And thank you very much for the new password. Sisiyeko. It is a very nice nickname. I don't know why that Obama boy was making so much wahala about giving me a decent password. I don't have any extra anti-clot injections at home. My husband buys them at that one pharmacy in Ijika. Ask him. I am just a housewife. I am sorry you had to run out of the house at 2 o'clock this morning to look in for injections, but I warned your doubting Thomas assistant. I am happy my darling husband is well now. Thank you for the check. Why should I be angry that you changed the money to 10 million naira? After all, you were discussing face-to-face with my husband, who owns the money, and I am just an ordinary housewife. The only problem was those alterations all over the check. If you want to alter a check, why couldn't you look for the same black biro that I used to write it? How much is a black biro? The bank manager became suspicious at the blue and black ink. We used to write the check. He refused to pay it, especially when you didn't allow my husband to answer his mobile phone when they tried to reconfirm the check. In fact, when the manager saw the spot of blood on the check, he insisted on calling the police. I told him it was red ink, but he said it looked like blood. So I started to scream. I know how to cry very well, don't worry. And he agreed that it was just a domestic husband and wife matter. Now, just because of your greed, everybody in the bank is red. There is no point in sending you another check because I dare go back there. That is the problem with you greedy people. By now, you should have 1 million naira in your pocket. I should have my husband at home helping me to pack for my visit to Dubai. But no, you saw a check that is not even blank and started adding zeros again. First, you sent beggars to call me prostitute on the street. Now you've made everybody in the bank think I am a thief. You better take 50,000 naira I have at home and let's settle this matter once and for all before my husband's injections send you into debt. Don't worry. I will still send my trinkets. As for me, I always keep my promises. Listen, you don't have to make millions and millions on your first job, you know. Don't say I'm insulting you with proverbs. But you know that when the trader takes too long for the best price, her tomatoes can become rotten. Since we are talking about food, did you remember what I said about the soft acre? It's not that he cannot eat pounded yam at night. It's just that I know how many piles operations he has had. Anyway, I'm sending you back the unused check with all of the refer to drawer stamps before you start thinking I have cashed your money and added it to my Dubai money. I know how you men think. By the way, between you and me, whose blood was on the check? Don't say I am doubting you, but please send me a picture of my darling husband. Ask him for me if true, he had 10 million naira in that account. I didn't know that the overdraft could reach like that. Mrs. Ashuru, Sisieko, Konton. Day 5. Dear Marwa Dimeshati, this picture of my husband. I have been crying since morning. Why did you naked him like that? Even his mouth is double the size it used to be. Look, I am very sorry if I vexed you. I don't even know what I could have written to offend you like this. But whatever it is, I am very, very sorry. But why? What sort of people will flog an innocent man just because of his wife's sharp tongue? And what did I even write in the letter that could have vexed you like this? Well, at least his John Thomas is still there. You people are still behaving like armed robbers. The newspaper said that the Suruli businesswoman used to play ludo with her kidnappers and eat akara from the same plate with them. And for 3 months, nobody harassed her as a woman concerned. Please now, behave like kidnappers. After all, you're not working in Guantanamo. My darling husband is your tomatoes. You must not let him rotten. To come to the business side of the matter, I think that 100,000 is not impossible for me to raise. This is what you should have said since instead of all those millions and millions you have been calling. Now, my flight is leaving tomorrow night. With how my husband is looking now, I don't even have the mind to go. Even if you release him now, God will punish all of you true. If you see how I suffer for this Dubai journey. Anyway, my own watches are Kapajo, but my husband has one expensive Rolex that I can use to borrow the remaining 50,000. He doesn't normally wear it except when he is going to Owambe parties, and I have been looking everywhere for it. Ask him if he put it in his safe. When we were building our house in the good old days, my husband used to see serious bribes, and EFCC was working well that time, always sniffing around like police dogs. So he used to hide his bribes at his senior brother's house, which is actually their family house. We still have a room there that we lock up with a safe inside the wardrobe. It is free from armed robbers because of the mobile policeman permanently stationed at his brother's gate. Now that his bribe income has dried up, my darling husband doesn't go there much. Just ask him where he kept his Rolex. If it is in the safe, I will need his combination. Tell him I am not selling his Rolex. Oh, I know he will hate that sort of thing. I'm just going to borrow the money on it until he comes out. Did you flog my husband with wire or kobobo? Please send me pictures of his back view. I have to do a vigil for his healing tomorrow and anoint the pictures and burn incense in front of them. I am sending his buba and sukoto in case you have torn all his clothes in your vex. Yours faithfully, Mrs. Ashiru Sisieko Koton. Day 6. Aha! Aha! These new pictures of Mr. Ashiru. Ha! I have been laughing all morning. I can see some new wounds on the poor man. I'm not surprised that you had to flog the combination number out of him. Our marriage could have survived the money he was hiding from me, but no, not that will. I saw the Rolex there, but I can see that your ransom has gone up again. Well, I won't even pay you 50,000 naira anymore. I have to be honest with you. As soon as I got your first letter, I went to my Igbo pharmacist friend in Ikija and used the money to fix a CCTV over her counter. There are 5 or 6 pharmacies in Lagos that sell my husband's injection. But when I read your Bomber Boy's very first letter, I very well realized that even if his 2 parents resembled human beings, at least one of his grandparents must have been a gorilla. True. When the time came, guess which all-night pharmacy in the whole of Lagos State your whole gang went to at 2 o'clock in the morning? You must be the one they were calling Deselu, not so? That ugly scar on your face must be the reason for your Marwa de Machete nickname. Sorry, I know this is your first kidnapping. It is not Abi. You should go back to armed robbery. Even monkeys can make money from armed robbery. But kidnapping is not a good job for Mughals. Anyway, back to our business. I can tell you how much I found in the safe because my maths is bad. And it is a private divorce settlement. Anyway, none of your business. So because he confessed that he had plenty of money in the safe, your final ransom is now 50 million naira, eh? I told you, it is greed that is going to kill you. That's when you were calling me Mugu and Asharu, not so? For Mr. Ashuru's pictures, I don't know if you found your Ashuru yet, but me, I am definitely nobody's Mugu. Tell my husband that as well. Tell him that after 25 years of marriage, I still can't believe he was planning to leave our house to a mistress and a bastard son. Okay? So he was the one that ate the bribes, and it was his name on the CFO. But who queued for weeks and weeks at GB Olivant buying cement and iron rods? Who fought laborers and greedy tipper drivers for the 3 years it took us to build? But love can make a woman stupid. For 20 years, I hid the medical report that confirmed that it was his K-legged sperms that made us childless, just because I didn't want my husband to feel like half a man. And then he goes and finds a mistress that presents him with somebody's bastard to call him son. Anyway, give him this medical report. It is going away present from me. From now on, money will be my own husband. And if my love for him tries to come back, I will bring out these pictures again and remember how I married a worm by mistake. I also have some going away presents for you people because I'm a woman of my word. You can't sell them for much, so just give these trinkets to the women in your lives because I really had pity for them. And sorry, I told my pharmacist friend that she could double the price of the injection that you were desperate, but that Igbo woman, she went and tripled it. Release Mr. Ashiru immediately, Mr. Mugu. You have beaten him enough, thank you. And I really want to see the hole in his safe. I am not afraid of his brother's connections with Interpol. It isn't their business to bring back runaway wives. And Mr. Ashiru can't tell anyone I have stolen his millions because EFCC will first of all ask him where he got them from in the first place. I am leaving for the airport now, so my housemaid will be tying my yellow head tie this night. But if Mr. Ashiru doesn't answer me from his house when I phone from London, his brother will get your Nollywood pharmacy video and copies of your letters. And you know how efficient the police can be when they really feel like working. By the way, Thank you for your silly letters. I didn't really want to live as a second-class person in a Muslim country, and I don't know how I could have applied for asylum during my stopover in London without all those threats to machete me and serve my pieces to your dogs. Idiot. Sisi.
So, our third and final reader, batting cleanup tonight, is our own Martín Espada. Since we're already all on his team and members of his fan club, I think it would be silly of me to delay his reading by more than another 30 seconds or so, especially since any introduction I could give would inevitably be woefully inadequate. So let me simply remind you all that his latest book of poems is Floaters, winner of the National Book Award and a finalist for the Los Angeles Times Book Prize. Other collections of poems notably include Vivas to Those Who Have Failed, The Trouble Ball, and Alabanza. He's the editor of What Saves Us, Poems of Empathy and Outrage in the Age of Trump, and Martín has received the Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize, the Shelley Memorial Award, the Robert Creeley Award, a Letras Boricuas Fellowship, and a Guggenheim Fellowship. I'm extremely happy that he's here, so please join me in welcoming him this evening.
Buenas noches. Welcome, everyone. Many thanks, Jim Hicks. That is what I was hinting at. Many thanks to Emily and Eddie. Thanks to compañera AmaliaLú Posso Figueroa. Thanks to Shanta Lee. And thanks to Kym Newberry. I'm going to read my two poems in the new MR, but I've been publishing in this journal for 30 years. So I'm going to read 4 other poems I've also published in these pages. Now, I published this first poem back in 1994. And it was originally a poem written for the New Year of 1993. So, 30 years. The poet William Blake writes, "What is now proved was once only imagined." And so this is a poem of the political imagination. And the premise is very simple. What if this were the year that justice was finally done? The meek shall inherit. Now, I am perfectly well aware that no change for the good ever happens overnight. I am also aware that no change for the good ever happens without being imagined first. Even if at the time we imagine that great change it seems impossible, never going to happen, because history teaches us otherwise and teaches us too that we are the agents of that change. It does not come from the White House, it comes from our house.
Okay.
And so, This poem was written 30 years ago. Let's see how it holds up. Imagine the angels of bread. This is the year the squatters evict landlords, gazing like admirals from the rail of the roof deck or levitating hands in praise of steam in the shower. This is the year that shawled refugees deport judges who stare at the floor and their swollen feet as files are stamped with their destination. This is the year that police revolvers, stove hot, blister the fingers of raging cops and nightsticks splinter in their palms. This is the year that dark-skinned men lynched a century ago returned to sip coffee quietly with the apologizing descendants of their executioners. This is the year that those who swim the borders under tow and shiver in boxcars are greeted with trumpets and drums at the first railroad crossing on the other side. This is the year that the hands pulling tomatoes from the vine uproot the deed to the earth that sprouts the vine. The hands canning tomatoes are named in the will that owns the bedlam of the cannery. This is the year that the eyes stinging from the poison that purifies toilets awaken at last to the sight of a rooster-loud hillside pilgrimage of immigrant birth. This is the year the cockroaches become extinct, that no doctor finds a roach embedded in the ear of an infant. This is the year that the food stamps of adolescent mothers are auctioned like gold doubloons, and no coin is given to buy machetes for the next bouquet of severed heads in coffee plantation country. If the abolition of slave manacles began as a vision of hands without manacles, then this is the year. If the shutdown of extermination camps began as imagination of a land without barbed wire or the crematorium, then this is the year. If every rebellion begins with the idea that conquerors on horseback are not many-legged gods, that they too drown if plunged in the river, then this is the year. So may every humiliated mouth, teeth like desecrated headstones, fill with the angels of bread. This next poem comes from the truth issue of MR in the winter of 2017. As we know, repression of immigration is nothing new, and yet it simply does not work. Case in point, Sacco and Vanzetti, two Italian immigrants and anarchists wrongly convicted of a factory payroll robbery and murder in the year 1920. Despite an international outcry, they were executed at Charlestown Prison in Boston in 1927. Now, the former site of Charlestown Prison is currently Bunker Hill Community College, a school with an enormous immigrant population, and the setting of this poem. I now pronounce you dead. For Sacco and Vanzetti, executed August the 23rd, 1927. On the night of his execution, Bartolomeo Ansetti, immigrant from Italia, fishmonger, anarchist, shook the hand of Warden Hendry and thanked him for everything. I wish to forgive some people for what they are now doing to me, said Vanzetti, blindfolded, strapped down to the chair that would shoot 2,000 volts through his body. The warden's eyes were wet. The warden's mouth was dry. The warden heard his own voice croak, "Under the law, I now pronounce you dead." No one could hear him. With the same hand that shook the hand of Bartolomeo Vanzetti, Warden Hendry of Charlestown Prison waved at the executioner who gripped the switch to yank it down. The walls of Charlestown Prison are gone, to ruin, to dust, to mist. Where the prison stood, there is a school. In the hallways, tongues speak the Spanish of the Dominican, the Portuguese of Cabo Verde, the Creole of Haiti. No one can hear the last words of Vanzetti or the howl of thousands on Boston Common when they knew. After midnight, at the hour of the execution, Warden Hendry sits in the cafeteria, his hand shaking as if shocked, rice flying off his fork, so he cannot eat no matter how the hunger feeds on him, muttering the words that only he can hear. "I now pronounce you dead." Oh, here's another poem about an immigrant. A janitor from Chile I knew, or only thought I knew. Consider the words of Hannah Arendt, her famous phrase, "the banality of evil." This poem appears in the new issue. It's on page 64 of your hymnal. The janitor who swept where there was no dust. Everybody loved the new janitor, a round man who grinned roundly all day, who hauled away the detritus of daycare in garbage bags, crushed juice boxes, the cellophane rice crackers, snacks, napkins that wiped bawling mouths, toilet paper that socked up the puddles from bladders that burst like water balloons. He swept even where there was no dust, mopped even where there was no dirt, scrubbed the faucet silver and the bowl white, even when everybody said, "Gracias, Orlando," and told him he could go home for the night. We knew he was a refugee from Pinochet's Chile. We knew he was a Mormon like my mother-in-law. I invited Orlando to dinner in Spanish. After dessert, we sipped tea and talked in a corner about the coup. "I was in the army," he said. "I was in the countryside. I saw nothing. I saw no one arrested. I saw no one tortured. I saw no one die." "Nothing?" I said. "Nothing," he said. He wanted to talk about the Church of Latter-day Saints, how they baptized even the dead. I wondered if the Church of Latter-day Saints baptized the 3,000 dead after the coup. Holy water rinsing the quicklime and mud from the bones, raising them heavenward to sit at the banquet table with the general and the soldiers who saw nothing. He swept where there was no dust. He mopped where there was no dirt. We kept his secret. It was our secret. So over the years, Amherst is a place where I have entrusted my poems. The poems that meant the most to me. The poems where I have said goodbye to friends. So in these pages, I have said goodbye to many friends. I want to say goodbye to them again tonight. This poem is about a major poet and an early mentor. His name was Robert Creeley. Bob Creeley. And we begin here with our visit to Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in Concord, Massachusetts, and the grave of Henry David Thoreau, the first war tax resistor. This was, by the way, the time of the Iraq War for me and Bob. And this poem for my friend is called "You Got a Song, Man," for Robert Creeley, 1926 to 2005. You told me the son of Acton's town nurse would never cross the border into Concord, where the revolution left great houses standing on Main Street. Yet we crossed into Concord, walking through Sleepy Hollow Cemetery to greet Thoreau, his stone stamped with the word Henry, jutting like a gray thumbnail down the path from Emerson and his boulder of granite. We remembered Henry's night in jail refusing tax for the Mexican War, and I could see you hunched with him, loaning Henry a cigarette, explaining the perpetual wink of your eye lost after the windshield burst in your boyhood face. When Emerson arrived to ask what you and Henry were doing in there, you would say, "You got a song, man? Sing it. You got a bell, man? Ring it." You hurried off to Henry in his cell before the trees could bring their flowers back to Sleepy Hollow. You sent your last letter months ago about the poems you could not write. No words to sing when the president swears that God breathes the psalms of armies in his ear, and flags twirl by the millions to fascinate us like dogs at the dinner table. You apologize for what you could not say, as if the words were missing teeth you searched for with your tongue. And then a poem flashed across the page, breaking news of music, interrupting news of war. You got a song, man? Sing it. You got a bell, man? Ring it. Today, you died 2,000 miles from Sleepy Hollow, somewhere near the border with Mexico, the territory Thoreau wandered only in jailhouse sleep. Your lungs folded their wings in a land of drought and barbed wire. Boxcars swaying intoxicated at 4 a.m. and unexplained lights hovering in the desert. You said, "There's a lot of places out there, friend." So you would go, smuggling a suitcase of words across every border carved by the heel of map makers or conquerors, because you had an all-night conversation with the world, hearing the beat of unsung poems in every voice, visiting the haunted rooms in every face. Drive, you said, because poets must bring the news to the next town. You got a song, man? Sing it. You got a bell, man? Ring it. It appears I have dehydrated myself. I just had a vision of spilling that water all over a laptop. Because it's the kind of thing I would do. Well, so there's grief, but there's also love in an elegy. There's no elegy without the love. And this next poem is about Jules Chemetsky, my good friend, Jim's friend of many people in the room, mentor, scholar, UMass professor, founder, and editor of the Massachusetts Review, for many, many years. He died in 2021 at the age of 94. We came from the same part of Brooklyn 30 years apart. And this poem, again, appears in the new issue of MR on page 65. So follow the proverbial bouncing ball. I wrote this for the Chemesky Symposium that Jim also organized. And this is a sonnet called The Fireflies of Belmont Avenue for Jules Chemesky, 1928 to 2021. I see you as a boy, 10 years old, at your father's butcher shop on Belmont Avenue in Brooklyn. The words kosher meat spelled out in Hebrew across the window, the chickens dangling in the window, the words unbroken, the glass unbroken, the butcher unbroken. I see you watch your father as we watch our fathers, scanning the Yiddish newspaper at the counter, Lucky Strike glowing in his mouth as you wait for his words to rise and fall like fireflies or embers, learning how words fly or burn, when to cup your hands to catch a word, when to jump away. The customers would lean across the counter to buy chickens from your mother. I see you again at 80. I watch you as we watch our fathers, as I would watch my father and his cigarette, the organizer who could rouse the crowd, waiting for his words to fly or burn. I am a boy from the old neighborhood in Brooklyn, and you are the teacher, slicing up Hemingway like a chicken boned across the page. Yet, for me, a poet without the first strand of gray in his beard, your words are always fireflies. I would cup them in my hands and see them glow, as I see them now, even as I lift my hands to let them go. And I'll close with this poem for another editor and publisher, Alexander Sandy Taylor. Editor and publisher of Curbstone Press in Willimantic, Connecticut. Dear friend and mentor, I was a Curbstone poet and part of a community called Curbstonistas, ranging from Puerto Rican writers to Guatemalan writers to Vietnamese writers to U.S. veteran writers for over 30 years. Sandy Taylor created the Jude de Burgos Park in Willimantic, a hard scrabble city with a large Puerto Rican community, and named for a Puerto Rican poet, the most beloved poet of Puerto Rico, Jude de Burgos. So that's the setting, the surprising setting, you might say, for this last and final poem. True story. I need to say that. The day we buried you in the park for Sandy Taylor, 1932 to 2007, epigraph. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. Walt Whitman. The day we buried you in the park, I couldn't say no. Your wife had a plan, revealed on the phone with a hush of conspiracy. There are laws in this city against the interment of human remains in public spaces. This was the Poets' Park, your vision floating like the black butterflies of cinders over the house in ruins across the street. You and Juan saw the stone steps flowing down into the circle where the poets would stand and sing one day. You and Juan saw the poet showering the air with words and the trees drinking words like water. You nailed up the sign and spread your arms to greet us at the ceremony. This could not be explained to the clerk who stamps the licenses for the burial of the dead. Juan began to cry when he saw your ashes in the wheelbarrow. I shook him by the shoulder. The neighbor who watches the park from her window was eyeing us. I handed him the shovel. We had to clamp our jaws like mobsters stoically soiling their hands with the grit of a rival thug. Your wife poured a bag of plant food over your ashes in case the neighbor peeked too long through the hedges or the cops rolled their cruiser to a stop, bored after years of shoving drunks into the back seat. We stirred the ashes with our hands till they turned white at the wrist, and what I'd heard was true. There is bone that will not burn, bodies that refuse to become dust, the stubborn shards of a man. Ask any criminal who labors to bury the evidence. We weren't criminals. We dug the hole in the wrong place. Ripped out the roots, grunted with every shovel full of rocks. We made the little grave too big, then tossed away the dirt, forgetting that we need to fill the hole once we dumped you in it. When I tipped the wheelbarrow, your ashes landed with a puff, drifting in the briefest of clouds over the grass, and Juan dropped to his knees, crying again, giving us away. The neighbor poked her head from the window like a chicken suspicious of the world beyond the coop. An hour after we began, I wore a mask of ash and sweat, black shoes white like the last man in the village to hear the warning of volcano, or a miner on the first day back at work after the strike is lost, or a believer smeared with his ancestors about to wash in the great river. A woman who recognized my face stopped me as I crossed the street. "Did you just bury something in the park?" she asked. Why would I do a thing like that? They say. The day we buried you in the park, I drove home with 3 scoops of your ashes in a coffee can, chock full of nuts, the heavenly coffee, their slogan emblazoned in a cloud across the New York skyline. At your desk there was bad coffee and good poetry, but no heaven. So I will look for you under my boot soles, walking through the world, soaking up the ghosts wherever I may go.